You done with your Oreo?
Yeah, done with my Oreo.
Okay, good. Do we really know what happened? The brother did.
The brother, that's what I thought too.
I mean, that seems like kind of obvious. Hey, do you want to talk about death?
Yeah. I mean,
Murdery thingy. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Yay. Whew, we made it.
I know, right?
Yeah, it only took all day.
We are just on our shit.
Yeah, we're like really responsible people. We're like both very type A.
Yeah, it's crazy like how efficient we are. Like,
I would describe us both as extremely detail oriented.
Yeah, like
And diligent.
the podcast comes out on Wednesdays. We tend to record on maybe Sunday or Monday, not Tuesday night.
So we're just practicing our lying right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually start my research like basically the next day, like decide what I'm gonna do, and I like intend to like do it like very consistently, but it's usually like I'll do a bunch right at the early part. This is like how I'm in school too, right? And then to like feel like I'm ahead, and then you know, to give myself like a false sense of security, and then I'll procrastinate hardcore procrastinate, and then I'll get it all done right at the last minute.
I do that with papers. I write one page, and then I take a break, and that break lasts 3 days.
Right. It's like
I deserve a break.
Oh yeah, great. And then you think like, oh, I could have been doing that the whole time, like we were just talking about. Anyway, I think we got a couple of good ones for you today, though.
I'm so excited, but I always say that, so.
So excited, and I just can't hide it.
Stop.
I thought I'd do the bad singing this time, maybe.
No, because you're a good singer.
But I can also be a bad singer.
Yeah, but you can't, like, be a bad singer like I can be a bad singer, because I'm, like, actually a bad singer.
You're not a bad singer. You're just... You don't sing as well as some other people. But, I mean, you've been in choir before. Like, you could basically carry a tune.
I guess.
But I think it's also that you're, like, a low alto, and you usually try to sing stuff that's, like, not actually in your range.
Yeah.
So that, like...
It's hard to find that. Like, all the Disney songs are, like, soprano.
Well, yeah, because there's, like, no solo altos. Well, there is repertoire, but, you know, it's, like, just not as...
I think Elsa is an
much.
alto.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch it again.
And maybe Moana. Hers is pretty low.
Yeah. I'd say she's more of a mezzo than an alto, but...
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's different.
Anyway.
Welcome to Mystery Murdery Thingy.
Mystery Murdery Thingy, where we do mysteries.
And murderies.
And thingies.
Yay! Mine's a thingy this week.
Mine is a straight up murdery.
Yeah, I was like...
So much murder.
So when we were like researching and napping today...
Yeah.
It's like the main things that we did today. But like alternately, like I was napping and you were researching at one point, and you just kept being like, oh my god. What? Like, oh Jesus Christ. Yeah. Like it sounded really bad.
It's good. It's good.
It's good in the sense that it's very gory.
No.
It's okay. Like I'll let you tell your story.
There's just a lot.
Yeah. I don't want to tell your story for you. But I'm going to go first because mine is not murder. We usually like to start with the not murdery and move, sort of ease into the murder. I think I'm also going to get up because this chair is like... Whoa. Okay. I almost died. I'm going to be over here because that chair is like making noise and it's annoying me.
It's weird that you're over here now.
Is it? I'm like the student and you're the teacher.
It's like disorienting.
I think I'll probably cut out this part. Or I don't know. Okay. I know, but like when I was editing one of the, not the last one, the one before that, I just kept hearing that like creaking sound. And I was like, oh, that's not great. Okay, so like I said, mine's a thingy this week. And I'm talking about What?
Nothing.
Is that too enthusiastic? Am I doing my
excited.
Am I doing my podcasting voice too hard? This is the voice when you do your podcast and you talk like that. I'm just like, I think I imitate, I've told you this before, I think I imitate like Marcus from last podcast, just like unconsciously, because I like the way that he like tells the stories, like the inflections he does and stuff.
He's cute.
You think so?
I think he's adorable.
Yeah, you also think Benedict Cumberbatch is hot. We're going to talk about him later. Teasing weird shit in the news.
Shut up.
Okay, so...
I'm not alone.
No one is alone. So I'm going to talk about the Nazca lines, which a lot of people have heard of. I mean, I feel like they're pretty famous.
I had not known what they were.
Like, there's been a, like, History Channel segments on them, and, like, they're pretty, like, mainstream at this point. Nazca. You can spell it either with a Z or with an S.
Nazca lines.
Yeah, the Nazca lines. And what they are hundreds, like, probably over 1,000, what are called geoglyphs and biomorphs, which are pictures that are etched into the desert sands in that really, really, like, arid part of southwestern Peru, like right next to where the Atacama Desert is. The Atacama Desert is the driest place on Earth. It's the place on Earth that is most like the moon or like Mars in a way, where Mars kind of, because the surface sand is like kind of oxidized, so it looks kind of red like Mars does. And it's just like really arid. There's like very little wind, almost no rain. It rains less than an inch a year.
Wow.
And that's part of why these lines in the desert, like these etchings in the desert, have been able to persist for so long. Like, they look essentially, although some of them have been damaged slightly, but essentially they look the same as they did like 2,000 years ago when they were first constructed.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And they were made by members of what's called the Nazca culture, which was around from about 100 BCE to 800 CE. So remember, like we talked about last time, counting up as you go backwards before the Common Era. Exactly, about 900 years. But they really flourished from the turn of, from year 1 to about 600. That's kind of when they mostly made these things. And they were like a very technologically sophisticated culture for that time and place. And they actually even created these like underwater aqueducts. I think they're called like burglaries or something like that. And those are still used today. Like, the people who live there still use them to get water 2,000 years later. So, clearly these people... Exactly. And, I think they definitely had a deep knowledge of, like, engineering and, management. And it seems like they were a sort of developed enough society and culture that they, could have people specialize. And I think that speaks to kind of, like, the context in which the Nazca lines were made, because they're very impressive just in terms of like how the fuck did they do this. People talk about that with like Stonehenge, like we did the episode about like how did they move those stones, or the same thing with the pyramids. So there's just like places throughout the world where it's like, how did ancient people do this? The Nazca lines are very much like in that tradition, like how the fuck did they do this? And as always, some people say aliens.
Aliens.
Probably not, but it's you got to mention that every fucking time. Right. So these big etchings in the desert, like I said, they were preserved by the climate there, for almost 2,000 years, and but there has been a little bit of damage by like dumbass tourists, of course.
That one trucker dude.
Fuck
that guy.
I know. And this was like 5 months ago or 4 months ago. It was like very recently. This like idiot trucker guy, I guess he was like trying to save time. And he drove like straight through, this like 300-foot area or whatever of one of the areas with the Nazca lines. And I'm pretty sure he was, like, arrested, because it's, like, illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's, like, protected by Peru. Like, you can't do that. Yeah, it's in Peru. It's, like, I remember, like 500, 800 miles south of Lima, which is the capital. So yeah, it's like right on the southeastern coast, but it's a really like high plain, so that's why it's like cut off from the moisture from the ocean. So that's why it's like so dry.
Dry, okay.
Yeah, because there's this like huge butte or whatever, B-U-T-T-E, butte, or however you say that word, that's like cutting it off from the ocean. There's just like a huge butte. It's like of a giant.
I was really confused.
But no,
I was like, are the mountains round? Like...
Right, not exactly. So they were made, like we know basically that they were made by removing the top 12 to 15 inches of desert. And when you do that, you take away that like top layer that's oxidized and rust colored, and it leaves behind the undersand, which is white. So it creates this like really strong contrast. And that's why they're so like apparent when you're up in the sky, or if they're smaller when you're down there, you can like really tell that it's a completely different thing, and they look like they were like drawn into the into the desert. And presumably the way that it's kind of like people think that they constructed these was by having a rope strung along a series of like posts. Okay. So they would like put a post down, and they would have a rope around that, and they would have like one or maybe multiple posts. And then so that would be like one person doing that along, both sides, right? And then there'd be another person who would be like directing it. And in the case of like the lines, some of which are like 30 miles long, like almost completely straight, another third person or second person or whatever would be there, telling them, okay, it needs to be a little bit more. It's not quite straight. Okay, they're all straight. Okay, let's move on to the next section. And they would kind of create them in that way and take away the sand either along those ropes or in some cases between them, creating like a negative image. So there's like two different types, basically.
I don't understand how they'd move sand with rope.
Oh, they don't move the sand with the rope. They have another wooden post that they're using to take the sand away. So they have the posts with the ropes wrapped around them to measure and like keep, those are like the guidelines, the guideposts. And then they have another wooden post that they're using to like take away the sand.
Draw the picture.
To actually like draw the picture, exactly. Yeah. And this is, supported by the fact that there have been some of these posts that have been found at the ends of those lines. Like they found, the ancient whatever remains of like this setup, basically. So it seems pretty clear that's how they did it. There's another sort of more...
Sorry, keep going.
Okay. There's another like more kind of outlandish theory of how they directed it, and that involves the use of an ancient hot air balloon. Yeah, so there's like one particular researcher, he's like obsessed with this idea, like weirdly, that they had like hot air balloons in ancient Peru somehow, and they like flew.
Totally.
Yeah, totally, because of course. And there's no evidence for this in their, they made drawings of stuff. They didn't make any drawings of themselves in a hot air balloon, right? There's no materials left over that we found or anything. But he did make a usable hot air balloon. It flew for about 2 minutes. Got him, a couple of 100 feet in the air. Using ancient materials and means that they would have had available at the time.
That's weird. Which
is a pretty typical way of like testing something like that out, but usually there's like some extant evidence or support for the theory. Like it's not just like, well, they could have done it. Well, they could have done a bunch of different stuff, right? Like that doesn't really prove anything. And so I think what you maybe were going to ask earlier was, not only like from a physical standpoint, how did they create these, but how did they know what to do, right, on these huge scales?
Yeah.
That's the other, that's probably the central mystery of the Nazca lines. And what people think is that they used basically surveying techniques where they would create a grid and they would create smaller, images onto a smaller grid, right? to serve as a guide, and then they would create the grid on a larger scale and then fill in the grid, as they went along.
That sounds like a lot of math.
It would have been a lot of math, a lot of, complex coordination between people and, engineering. But like we mentioned at the beginning, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about, the aqueducts a little bit. I think they possessed those kinds of skills. I don't think that sort of coordination and engineering would have been beyond the Nazca people in terms of, what I read about them. So I think it's pretty plausible that that's how they did it. And, again, there's not necessarily direct evidence of that. I mean, how could there be, right? Unless there were, writings, but from what I read, I'm not sure that they had a system of writing necessarily. So that, that seems like how they probably directed it. Or aliens told them what to do. And we're up there, standing on, the underbelly of their flying saucers.
Sure.
Maybe they used some form of semaphore, gave them some directions, or maybe they just had a big map that they put on the bottom of the, space saucer and said,
totally.
Pointed, you there, right now. Yes, good.
That's exactly how, I think that's the most believable one.
So let's get into a little bit more of what exactly they are, right? So, as I mentioned initially, there's over 1,000 of them, 800 of them, so the vast majority are just straight lines, extremely straight lines, and some are as long as 30 miles. A lot of them are less than that, a few miles maybe, but some of them are 30 miles long, and they intersect as well, and they create different geometric shapes, but some are also freestanding geometric shapes. That's about 300 of them. And those are triangles, rectangles, trapezoids, spirals, zigzags, wavy lines, all different kinds of symbology. Why, right?
Yeah, why?
Yeah, I know. And that's a really hard question to answer. We'll get into some of that here in just a second. So there are also 70 that are so-called biomorphs. And those are pictures of animals, humans, and plants. And those are up to 1,200 feet long. So not as big as the lines, but still freaking huge, 1,200 feet long, said on one of the websites, is basically as big as the Empire State Building. So an Empire State Building large, monkey or killer whale or whatever. Those
are so weird.
Oh, you're looking at pictures now?
Yeah, I'll post pictures.
Yeah.
Sure. Holy moly.
There's also a spider, a hummingbird, cactus plant, llama, duck, flowers, trees, a lizard, and a dog.
And an astronaut.
Well, the astronaut, yes. There's also the astronaut. I was going to mention that. There's also some disembodied hands. Just hands with no other body parts, which I think is kind of creepy. I don't know. And there are also some that we just simply don't know what they are. They're nothing that we recognize. And this is, again, where the alien, it's aliens, right? Good. Must be. So there was also one that was found more recently in 2011 that seems to show a decapitation ceremony.
What?
And that one's pretty small. It's 16 feet by 12 feet. But this decapitation scene is part of the evidence of, one theory of the why, right? Why did they do these? Why were they made? And the theorizing about that, sort of the history of, the Nazca lines in the modern era started when they were rediscovered by the Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Cespe in 1926. So we've only really known about them in the modern world for about, 85 years or so, 80 years, 90 years. I'm not good at math. 90 years, I guess, now. So they weren't extensively studied until flight became regular in that area of the world, which was in the 30s. And that's when people were oh shit, there's tons of these things, and they make pictures and what are these?
Bucket list.
Right? Atlas Obscura is doing a trip partly to these in 2019. So start saving up, right? So an early researcher, an American named Paul Cossack, went and did an extensive, I think probably one of the first like extensive studies of them in 1941. And he just happened to be standing at the base of one of the long lines on the evening of June 22nd, 1941, which is one day after the winter solstice, and he noticed that the line was directly pointing at the sunset. And from that, he surmised, right, he sort of intuited, these lines must be some kind of astronomical guide, right? That's too crazy of a coincidence to be a coincidence. And he called them, the Nazca lines, quote, the largest astronomy book in the world, unquote.
Okay.
So that was his theory of, why did they make these? Maybe the lines are some kind of, astronomical guide or, whatever.
But they're also pictures. Like, that's what's like, they're just like straight up pictures.
Yeah, and there's also the pictures. So German researcher who was like a little bit after him, Maria Reiche, who's known as the Lady of the Lines, which I think is kind of sort of a weird nickname, but okay, studied and protected the Nazca lines for about 40 years. So this was like her life's work to decipher them and to keep people away because people fuck shit up.
Yeah.
Which they've done, like that dumbass trucker. We didn't have Maria there to stop him. And she actually lived in like a small house near the desert to like literally like keep watch over them.
Wow.
So like, yeah, she was like fucking serious. And she shared Cossack's astronomical theory. Like she thought that that's why the lines were made, basically. But that theory has been basically disproven in modern times, or more recently, I suppose. And the way that we know that is almost certainly not why they were made is because there was a statistical analysis done of them by a research team. So they looked at, the position of a large set of these lines, and they compared that to astronomical phenomena and such. And they found that they didn't match up with that stuff any more often than a set of random lines.
Oh, okay.
So
it was maybe a coincidence, like a one-time thing.
Exactly. It does seem to have been, counter to his intuition, simply a random coincidence. And there are other places in the world, like Stonehenge, where people have done similar analyses and they've shown very exact correspondences with astronomical phenomena. So, I think it's a good test, It seems to yeah. So that's not why. So that doesn't really answer the question.
I know, right?
but at least,
still, it's like an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, and it sort of forecloses that possibility for the most part, so. But like you say, it doesn't even address the animal pictures or anything like that. So it would really only have been a partial explanation anyway.
So are they all close together? Are they in like one general area, or are they spread out?
No, they're fairly close together. I think the area in which they are, all of them, I think it's in like a 100-mile area or something like that.
Okay.
So, what probably would have been within, the basic dominion of a, small to medium-sized but well-developed city-state, in South America at that time. Nothing like the Aztecs, who would have been spread out over thousands of square miles, but, certainly a substantial, little society within itself. Which I think is also interesting to think about, just those people and, like, the culture that was, like, around this. And, that's sort of a whole other mystery in and of itself. Like, but that's sort of a different thing. So, like we mentioned earlier, another theory, a bit more outlandish, says that maybe the lines were an alien landing strip. Of course. Bring them down.
That doesn't make any sense.
And as I've said,
I like hearing the alien ones to see like where the logic could come from, but that one doesn't make any sense at all.
In any way. Including because if there were spaceships that, like, let's take this seriously for 1 second, right?
Yeah.
If there were literally spaceships, which are presumably very large and heavy, that came down onto the desert during that time, don't you think there'd be some evidence of that in the sand? Look, these lines are still there 2,000 years later. Why wouldn't the evidence of these landings be there 2,000 years later? So to me, that in and of itself is like, it couldn't possibly be the case. Plus, stuff can't really land there. It's like very soft.
Yeah.
It would just sink down.
And wouldn't, if they had like, I don't know why I'm picturing like a helicopter, but the sand would move, right?
Presumably there would also be some movement in the sand. There would be some physical evidence in the sand. There is none. So you're wrong. I'm sorry.
About the...
You fucking conspiracy theorist. No, conspiracy theorists are great people, I'm sure, but some of them. So anyway, that's aliens, probably not. So, sorry to burst your bubble about the aliens. A more plausible theory is that the lines and the biomorphs were tied to kind of a more general ceremonial practice, probably tied to invoking godly intercession for water, obviously. And that's kind of the presumption because water is extremely scarce in this area, as we talked about. And the people, would have been, trying to get some kind of, which mirrors practices that are done in other parts of South America today. I think they said in like Chile or something. Mm-hmm. There's this ritual practice where people dance or walk along a long line between different, little kind of shrines and stuff.
Like a rain dance?
They're doing a rain dance, exactly. That's like literally what they're doing in some of these instances. So they think that might have been the same thing happening here, that people would have taken pilgrimages, along these lines to intercede, for water, to do the rain dance, in other words. And that traditional practice probably also included ritual sacrifice.
Oh, man.
And that's where these like headless bodies come in, right?
What?
So, yeah, headless bodies out of nowhere. Bang. 8 headless bodies. Yeah, that's right. This story just got a little bit murdery. So there have been 8 of these headless bodies discovered. I just like saying headless bodies. I don't know why. Ichabod Crane or something. So they've been found in tombs at the end of some of these lines. And it appears that they were like very honored dead. So it appears that they were sacrificed in a very like ceremonial kind of honorific manner. And there's a researcher from Texas State University named Christina Conley who said, and this was on the unmuseum.org site, that, quote, human sacrifice and decapitation were part of powerful rituals that would have allayed fears by invoking the ancestors to ensure fertility and the continuation of Nazca society. The decapitation of the Latiza individual appears to have been part of a ritual associated with ensuring agricultural fertility and the continuation of life and rebirth of the community, unquote. So I felt like that was like a really good kind of just encapsulation, from an academic who actually knows, what the fuck she's talking about.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
It is. And it's a little bit intuited, but there's evidence, in their drawings and in pottery. And so, it seems like this is probably why they did some of this stuff. And I think it also speaks to why they could only be seen from the sky, why that would make sense. Because presumably they would have, been praying to sky gods who would have seen them from the sky.
That's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Right, because that's a very, common human thing to have sky gods. So, I think that kind of makes sense to me, at least. And let's see, what else was I going to say about that? Oh, yes, that's right. So the other sort of mystery around that part of it, right? Because they didn't find the heads, right?
Ever?
Yeah, exactly. The heads are not extant. Instead of heads, they found these little ceremonial funereal pots that had some of the same drawings on them. Like they had the killer whale drawing and the monkey drawing. And that's why they think, you know, these things must be tied together, right? The lines and the drawings in the desert and the ceremonial practice. I mean, I'm just like spitballing here.
But where do the bodies come from? Where do those fit in?
Well, what I'm thinking is that they thought we need to make a sacrifice to the gods in order, you know, to give them like a reason, or, you know, to pay them back for what they're giving us, right? I think that's the usual kind of thinking in these sort of ritual practices. So what's the most valuable thing that you possess in, you know, in any society? Human life. Human life is always the most valued. So naturally the gods would also highly value a sacrificial human life. And they would have used the same symbols and done it in the same place, and then maybe created these symbols on a larger scale to say, you know, to sort of signal to the gods, you know, these things are tied together. When we do this, we're, you know, reaching out to you, and we're creating all this stuff for you. So give us something too. Water, so we can live, because we're people and we need water. But we live in a fucking desert. I don't know. They should have just moved into the mountains or something. I don't know. But instead they did this.
Maybe they eventually did.
That's true, because, I mean, they did eventually go away or whatever happened. So, yeah. So, anyway, just to get back to what happened to the heads. So, what probably happened to the heads was they were taken as what are called trophy heads, which were a common practice in the Nazca culture to take these so-called trophy heads. And what the Nazca people did was, with the decapitated heads, they would remove the brain and the soft tissue right through the nose. They would, like, pull all that stuff out, the stuffing inside of the head. It's very gross. Yeah, just think about that for a second. Then they would sew up the lips with cactus spines, and they would drill a hole through the forehead, and then they would put a loop in it, and they would put a woven rope through that loop, and then they would hang them up and look at them, I guess, or something. It seems very disturbing and macabre to us.
Yes.
And I'm sure that it's revolting on a basic level to everyone listening to this, including myself. But just know and remember that in every culture, there are certain practices that seem abhorrent to other cultures, and try at least in some way to see it on its own terms. I'm not trying to, like, justify human killing. Obviously, that's terrible, and no one should do human sacrifice or keep human heads around. But, you know, try to understand that they had a reason for doing these things. They weren't savages.
I guess
they weren't backwards.
It's important to remember, I suppose.
They were a very highly developed, technologically sophisticated culture that also kept human heads around. It's a paradox, right? But it doesn't make them savages. Anyway, I'm sure you don't think that, and most people don't. But anyway, moving on. And it was thought at first that they were like war trophies, you know, these like heads, the trophy heads. But DNA has actually showed that they were Nazca people. So that's where they think, oh, maybe these are the heads from the ritual sacrifices that we found like the rest of the bodies from. So, yeah, that's that mystery. There have also been other lines that have been found in you know, this general area of South America, including what's thought as the largest known human figure in the world, which is called the Giant of Atacama, which I think is a pretty cool name. And it's 393 feet high, and it's surrounded by other kind of geometrical lines and stuff. And it was made before. So it was made probably, I think, by this preceding culture called the Paracas, that probably had an influence on the Nazca.
But is it still lined in the sand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still the same basic thing, where it's the removal of the sand's top layer, probably made in the same way. But, you know, it's like a slightly different thing as well. A slightly different style, let's say. So there were also some new lines that were discovered, like, just this month.
What?
Yeah.
The timing.
I know, it's crazy. Although I do have to admit that's part of why I did this. So it's not that crazy. And those include another killer whale. That one seems to, like, come up a lot. I think that must have been, like, a really important symbol to them, like the killer whale, which makes sense. And a woman dancing, and these are also older than the Nazca lines. But these ones were made in a hillside, so they were actually visible from the ground.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of interesting, too. I think that might show kind of an evolution where, you know, at first they had them up where they could see them, and then they thought, well, maybe that's not necessary anymore, or
maybe they wanted people to see them.
Well, yeah, I'm sure, but then that became not important for some reason. I don't know. A lot of them were also a lot smaller than the Nazca lines, so I think that kind of shows the development as well. Anyway, that's my story for this week.
Yay!
And my sources were History.com, the Nazca Lines page, a story by Suameda Sud on BBC.com on the travel section, the Reuters staff, a article with the headline "Archaeologists Discover New Geoglyphs Near Nazca Lines in Peru," a story by Megan Specia in the New York Times, Jason Galom in National Geographic, Lee Christek in the Museum of Unnatural Mystery, which is at unmuseum.org. Seemed like a really cool site. Atlas Obscura, their page on the Nazca Lines. And like I said, they are actually doing a trip down to Peru in 2019. And USA Today, a story there called Massive New Drawings Revealed in Peru, and they're much older than the Nazca Lines. And of course, Wikipedia, the Nazca Culture page.
You had a lot.
Well, so I had a lot of sources. It's funny because my write-up wasn't actually that long, but, you know, it's just... yeah, I don't know. I got a good you know, spread around of sources. So.
Me next.
Yeah, I think it's you next, right? Are you? Oh, you're the only other person. Oh, okay. Then probably yes.
If you haven't gone, raise your hand.
Would the real closizat please stand up? Don't. You can sit down.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the Brabant, Belgium. Stop laughing at me.
Sorry, you were like looking up all the pronunciations. I know you want to do well.
I know, I did. I messed up. Whatever.
It's fine.
Some crazy ass killers in Belgium. So they did a ton of armed robberies, mass shootings. They targeted people. This shit is insane. And I was like so surprised I had never heard about it before. So they're also known as the Gang of Navel. And so their spree lasted 3 years, from 1982 to 1985. Over that period of time, 20 people were killed and 40 plus more were injured.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's believed that the gang consisted of several people that assisted the three like core leaders who like did the legwork. And there wasn't always three men seen in like each one, but they were all basically the same. So the participants were known as the Giant, which was a man who was always described as being the tallest, and so he's seen as the leader, the Killer, who was the main shooter, and the Old Man, who was the getaway driver. And to this day, they are still unknown. Ooh.
Wow. That's fucked up. They got away with over 20 murders?
Yeah. But there was a deathbed confession of some guy who said he was part of them.
Okay. I'll believe it.
Yeah.
I will believe any deathbed confession.
Me too. Okay, so the majority of attacks took place in the province of Brabant. So others were done in the Belgian provinces of East Flanders, Namur, Hainaut, and one in Maubeuge, France. So they were kind of Mabouche. Yes, they were all in the general vicinity, but they weren't all in like the same exact whatever.
Right.
Okay,
it's like the Flanders region, right?
Yes. So I'm going to talk about each attack in explicit detail. I'm just kidding. There's so many. But I'm starting in 1982. So the first one in 1982 happened in March 13th. It was a theft of a shotgun at a store in Dinaan. A witness sees two men fleeing the scene. They're described as one was being 20, 30 years old, tall, skinny, blonde haircut, and the other being about 50 years old, graying, slightly smaller than the first. The next one was May 10th. Two men, each armed with a revolver, force the driver of a gray Austin Allegro to lay on the ground and hand over his keys, and they successfully make off with his car. So the car is found later the same day at a showroom/garage in Lembeek, where a Volkswagen Santana was then found to be stolen. So they abandoned the gray Austin there and stole the Volkswagen. What they found was that they forced the lock at the bottom of the glass entrance door to break in. They stole the car, and the ignition keys were like in the vehicle, which I can't really figure out why, but it was a showroom. So the next was August 14th. This was another armed robbery, and this time was at a grocery store in Maubeuge, France. Food, wine, champagne, and goose liver are stolen. Here's the thing: they always steal like weird stuff. It's a very interesting. All of them are very interesting. Mm-hmm. So this time, a telephone call was made to the police that a robbery was in progress, and the police arrive on foot, but they're shot and wounded by the burglars. The burglars leave in what is recognized as the blue VW Santana, which was stolen back in May. Mm-hmm. And that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. They're seen in a car that they had previously stolen.
Very brazen.
Yes, that's like exactly what I was thinking. So September 30th, armed robbery of a weapons dealer in Wavre, Belgium. There were three men this time, all of them unknown, who forced the people inside to lay on the ground. This became like a part of their MO, like classic, get everybody under control, everybody lay on the ground. They managed to steal 15 different firearms, including submachine guns. Oh. The arms dealer and existing customers, some of them are shot, and a policeman was killed after they opened fire as they left the store.
Wow.
They were gun crazy.
Yeah, it seems like they were pretty trigger happy.
Yes, very much so. And they would shoot stuff up to scare people.
Wow.
Yeah. And they also have a good amount of police chases. The police chased them down, but they got away in their VW Santana.
I can't imagine getting away in a VW Santana. I don't even know what the fuck that looks like, but anyway.
It looks like a normal car.
Oh, okay.
So this time the police actually ended up blocking their route.
Sure.
And the car collided straight into the police car. After this, a shooting takes place and two policemen are seriously injured. The car drives away, but it's found at 10:30 that night, and the back seat had been removed. It was sprinkled with gasoline and set on fire. So their getaway car is gone.
Right.
The last one of that year, 1982, was on December 23rd at the Het Kasteel in Beersel. Mark van den Einde discovered the body of his father, Jose van den Einde. The victim was handcuffed and killed with 8 bullets in his head. What? And again, 3 men were seen leaving the scene, all described the same way as they had been before.
Right.
And then 1983, January 12th, the body of a 58-year-old taxi driver, Angelou Constantine, was found in the... Okay, so the page that I was looking on was the official police investigation page, and it was in German, and so Google Chrome translated it for me. So sometimes there's like weird words. And so the body of the taxi driver, Angelou Constantine, was found in the, quote, suitcase of his taxi. So I decided that was probably maybe like the back seat Or maybe he was in the trunk, or maybe he was in the driver's seat.
I was thinking probably the trunk.
The trunk, do you think so?
Yeah.
Yes. So, bullets from a .22 caliber were found in his neck. February 11th, armed robbery of a supermarket in Rijksensar, Belgium. 3 armed men enter and threaten the store supervisor. Then 2 of the 3 of them move to where the other employees are counting money, and so one is like on lookout. It was like, this was kind of like classic, like one lookout here, one controlling people over here, one taking the money over here.
Right. Division of labor, always a good idea, whether you're robbing a bank or just running a lemonade stand.
Awesome, sounds great.
And that's Mario talks economics.
Doop 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 doop.
I think I'm like Susie Orman.
Okay. Armed robbery supermarket. So the employees are told to lay on the ground while they take the money. They end up with 17,163 euros, which in today's US dollar is a little over 20 grand. They fire shots at people as well as multiple shots at an Audi 100 as they leave the place. And they flee this time in a dark Peugeot 504. February 14th, which was 3 days later, a woman pulls into her driveway one evening and she notices a Peugeot 504 following her. A man gets out of the 504, holds a gun to her stomach, and forces her to give him the keys to her VW Golf. The one perp drives away in the Golf while the other man in the Peugeot follows. February 22nd, the Audi 11 with the multiple bullet holes that was shot at in the other supermarket armed robbery. It's stolen out of a garage that it was had been repaired in. February 25th, armed... Hold on, my computer just fucked up. Okay, armed robbery at another supermarket in Uccle, Belgium. 2 men are seen this time. One threatens staff and customers while the other forces an employee to open on the website it said, quote, fire case. I'm guessing that's the safe.
Must be.
She doesn't have the key. He destroys a nearby phone with a club out of anger, and until another employee presents him with the key. They came out with 14,874 euros, about $17,443. That's how much they stole. Meanwhile, a witness gets help to a nearby gas station, like while this is happening, but he is seen by the first armed guy, and he punches him in the eye and shoots him in the knees.
Oh.
Yeah. March 3rd, another supermarket armed robbery in Halle.
Holla!
I think it was Halle. It was something like Halle, Belgium.
Holla at us, Belgium.
Halle. So they did the same thing, classic. Everybody lay on the floor, or we'll shoot you.
Right.
While we're taking this motherfucker. Lead us to the safe. So the director, the one who led him to the safe, he's later found killed with a bullet in his head.
Oh my God.
And they are taking a whole shit ton of money, $34,366. And they flee in a Volkswagen Golf, which they had stolen from the woman a couple months before.
I feel like they're running like their own personal car dealership. In addition to like Murder Factory.
It's
like,
weird.
Oh my God.
So, May 7th, another supermarket armed robbery in Houdengounis, Belgium. Less than $22,000 was stolen and nobody was killed. June 8th, a Saab 900 Turbo was stolen out of a garage in Denuit. September 10th, factory robbery in Temse. 7 bulletproof vests were stolen. The caretaker of the factory is found dead in his house with 4 bullet wounds in his head, and his wife is found badly injured. The neighbors were awakened by gunshots and were then also attacked by the perps, and the windows of their homes were shattered with bullets. And their like 2 daughters found them.
Oh.
Yeah, super sad.
Yeah, this whole thing's pretty sad.
September 17th, theft at a 24-hour self-service center in Nivelles, and a murder of a couple in a white Mercedes. This is during the time that they're definitely escalating, and that more and more people are getting killed for, like, really stupid reasons, for they're just being in the way or being a witness and stuff like that.
They seem to have really enjoyed the killing. I mean,
Yes.
you don't shoot someone in the head 8 times to kill them.
Yeah.
You shoot someone 8 times in the head because you like shooting people in the head.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Like, clearly these were all deeply psychopathic people.
Oh, yeah. So, the burglars used a gas burner to break into the back entrance. The alarms go off, and then the police are called. They're there within minutes, and they are immediately attacked, and a shootout begins. 2 police were shot as they arrived on the scene. The bodies of a couple were found behind some shopping carts, and that was the couple who had pulled up in a white Mercedes while the burglary was happening. The men escaped in the stolen Saab Turbo, as well as they also took the white Mercedes, the couple's white Mercedes.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yep. After shooting at the police car at one of the police cars that ended up following them, they escaped down a little-known road, and the Saab was later found abandoned. That was one of their big things, was that there were roads and just unknown shortcuts that they all had access to. Right. And the cars were usually found abandoned along those roads, in forests, and they were sometimes on fire. So they ended up stealing 20 kilos of tea, 20 kilos of coffee, and 10 liters of cooking oil. Yeah.
Sounds like they were trying to set up like a bunker or something. Maybe they knew they would have to maybe go somewhere and just wait it out for a while.
Well, there's some theories that I'll talk about at the end. So, October 2nd, armed robbery of a restaurant in Ohain, Belgium. Threatened the owner and many employees to hand over the cash. Classic, get on the floor, I'll kill you. This time they took off with a red Volkswagen Golf GTI, and the owner of the restaurant, a man named Jacques Van Kamp, was found in the parking lot with a serious head wound and other bullet wounds, and he later died from his injuries. October 7th, 5 days later, armed robbery of a supermarket again in Beersel. One of the 3 perps that were seen, one of them takes a customer hostage holding a gun to his neck, forces him to go to the cash register. And while that happens, the manager enters and he's immediately killed. And another customer is also badly wounded. This time they left with a little under $35,000. December 1st, this was a double murder and a theft at a jewelry shop. So, at least 3 men were seen entering the shop. The owner and his wife were both killed, found by their 2 young daughters. They left with some jewels, a revolver, and left in a black Volkswagen GTI, the same as the one from the restaurant shooting in October, but they painted it black.
Okay.
So, moving into 1985, at this point in their killing spree, the burglars, they're escalating, nobody's business. And more people are being killed. It seems they start to focus less on the money and more on the people. It didn't start till later in the year. The first one was September 27th. Another supermarket armed robbery. Less than $6,000 were taken and 3 people were shot. And then about 15 to 20 minutes later, another supermarket was robbed, less than $25,000 stolen, and 5 people were killed and 1 was wounded. So the details of that. In the first supermarket robbery, 3 men exit a vehicle parked near a restaurant in the vicinity of the supermarket. They see a child, fucking take him and walk into the store, gun held to this kid's fucking head.
Oh my God.
3 customers that were standing outside. 1 was immediately shot and killed, and the other 2 fled. They enter the store with the kid. Class, everybody, get on the ground, we'll kill you. 1 man who didn't get on the floor fast enough was shot in cold blood. A clerk empties the cash registers into a paper bag. Meanwhile, the lookout, one of them who's on the lookout, one perp is on the lookout while the other demands that the manager open the safe. But the manager doesn't have the means to do so, but they're satisfied with the money from the registers. At this point, there's they have no time because there's fucking gunshots and cops are coming.
Yeah.
They leave. They still have the kid with them. They notice someone hiding in the little as they're like walking out, they notice somebody hiding in like a little arcade and they shoot him. They get to the... Hold on, I lost my spot. Okay, yeah. They get to the parking lot, see a van, and fire up to 8 shots into that van. The driver was killed and the son was seriously injured, but the son managed to flee. They let the kid go, and they drove off in their fucking Volkswagen Golf that they painted fucking black. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the one that happened 15 to 20 minutes later on the same day, another supermarket held up in, this time in Overijse. Less than $25,000 were stolen, 5 people killed, 1 wounded. In the parking lot, 3 children were playing with their bikes. The perps asked them to get up off their bikes and leave. 2 of them leave, and the others ruthlessly shot while trying to leave. One perp finds a victim and uses him as a shield as they enter the supermarket. And then again, same MO. Everybody get on the floor, I'm going to kill you. They start shooting random stuff to scare people, to tell people that they're serious. They shoot towards the registers. They wounded several people. Another perp leaves to go find the safe. And then he takes the money from there. And meanwhile, the lookout, he guards the customers in the store, and they end up leaving with the hostage after looting several cash registers. The driver of another vehicle is being attacked as they walk out, and this is also goes with the theory that there were people helping them, and there were more getaway cars and stuff like that. But he manages to escape. The other person in the parking lot is shot cold-blooded as he tries to get into his car. So a lot of it was like wrong place, wrong time type of shit.
Basically, if they saw you and they felt like it, they would shoot you.
Yeah. And the hostage that they took is killed by multiple shots from 2 different guns, two of them. So November 9th, 1985, this is the last attack, and this is the last time that any of the burglars were seen. So the burglars, whatever, they were wearing bizarre face paint and disguises, and they were always masked. They always had their identities. And there were multiple different types of descriptions, but it always, like, had the same, like, this one was tall, this one was shorter, but definitely older, and there was always another guy in a car, like, ready for the get out. Mm-hmm. So they were wearing bizarre face paint and disguises. They started yelling at customers. They taunted people. They shot anyone who looked at them, including kids. Witnesses said the shootings were done mainly by the killer. And at this point, it seemed more like executions. 2 children at the exit were wounded, and 1 woman who had been blocking the exit was shot and killed. There was another shootout with police in the parking lot as their cars sped away. So this is like some pop action movie bullshit right here. And the Volkswagen that was discovered was burnt in the forest the next day. It was found the next day. And so throughout these 3 deadly, pretty fucked up years, their mode of operation began to come pretty clear. So they had weapons, and the weapons were always of interest. They were always looking for more weapons to take. Specifically, 12-gauge pump shotguns that were loaded with a rare heavy buckshot. Many of the stolen cars that were used in their getaways were modified, and they were modified in a way that would have required a mechanic's expertise. And the getaway driver was highly skilled, and the routes were fast, and they were hard to find. These were all planned. So I think the biggest question here is how did they get away? And so
that's what I've been wondering this whole time.
Yeah. It's believed that the gang had some corrupt policemen working for them in on it. It's also believed that there were more than 3 people helping out the raids. Like I said before, it's possible there was an entire team, perhaps. They know that this ended up being a pretty big gang of people, even though there were 3 main people who were mostly seen, and it seemed like they were the ones who did the quote-unquote dirty work. So some conspiracy theories link these killings as political acts, as to do a cover-up of a targeted assassination. There was one guy shot in one of the supermarkets who people believe that he was targeted. There's evidence indicated that they were professional killers and that they were involved in drug smuggling and robberies. So that's also why I was looking at the weird stuff that they took. Mm-hmm. It like makes sense that they were like making drugs and shit.
Sure.
So yeah, so all this was tragic, pretty fucked up. It did allow Belgium to add more security to various places, and they revisited their gun laws, and they also looked at their police forces, and
rooted out some corruption there.
Yes. So that's the killing spree of the Brabant Belgium Killers.
Well, I can see why you kept being like, "Whoa, that's fucked up."
Exactly.
Wow, lots of fucked up shit in that one. Wow.
So I got my source from. There wasn't a lot of sources. The most sources were from articles talking about the guy who had a deathbed confession.
Oh, right.
But my sources were Wikipedia, and the other one was the official website of the police investigation, killersbrabant.be.
Cool.
Key.
That's key.
So, are we moving on?
Wait, what?
Are we moving on to weird shit?
Weird shit in the news.
Weird shit in the news.
Weird
shit in the news.
That's so weird.
Alright, do you want to go first? Ooh, that was creepy.
Was that good? Was that a good creepy laugh?
No. Stop it.
I'm a killer clown.
Stop it.
Doesn't that sound like a killer clown, though?
Hiya, Georgie.
Hiya, Georgie. We all float down here, Georgie.
Shut the fuck up.
Do you want to float too? That's my impression of Pennywise. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I am going to do 2 good shits in the news.
Good shit.
Good shit. And they are... Okay, I have a question for you. What do Benedict Cumberbatch and Mamadou Gassama have in common?
I don't know who Mamadou Gassama is.
They're both fucking heroes. One of them you know, one of them not so much. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Sherlock, amongst many other roles. A very famous person. And apparently, I'll tell that story first and then the other one. So, many stories about this, but there's one in the Washington Post. Let's see who's it by Alex Horton. Sherlock star Benedict Cumberbatch raced to save a man from attacker, Uber driver says. So he and his wife, Benedict Cumberbatch and his wife, were...
Cumbersnatch.
Right, Babadook Cumbersnatch and his wife were taking an Uber back from dinner or something. And so this was like 2 blocks away from fucking Baker Street, which is just even crazier. And they see a little gang of people attacking a bike delivery guy. And immediately Benedict Cumberbatch is like, no, ain't gonna happen on my watch. Jumps out of the car. Race it, Benedict Cumberbatch to the rescue.
Oh, what a guy.
And basically the attackers run off because it's fucking Benedict Cumberbatch running at you. And the guy, he had some cuts and bruises and stuff, but he would have been real fucked up if Mr. Cumberbatch had not come to the proverbial rescue.
I love him.
Other story.
How wholesome.
And the other thing about that is he did not want credit, which I think is great. He was did not want it to be a thing, but of course it was always going to be a thing because it's fucking Benedict Cumberbatch. Okay, so the other one, and this is about from a story from BBC News, and the headline is Mamadou Gassama, Mali Spider-Man to be made French citizen. So you may have seen this video of a Malian migrant named Mamadou Gassama, and there was a child who was hanging off of a balcony. right, like
that was his
fourth.
name.
That's his name. Like 4th or 5th story balcony, while the kid's dad is like being a fucking idiot, and Mr. Gassama, first thing he thinks is, okay, Mamadou Gassama to the rescue, and he scales up the side of this building and saves this kid's life.
Yeah, I saw this video. Nuts. That dude is fast. It's like some parkour shit.
He is like Spider-Man. Like, it's crazy.
Appropriately named.
Very apt. And he saved this kid's life, became a national hero. He met with President Macron, was given French citizenship, and offered a job as, of course, a fireman.
Awesome.
So, yeah, those are the 2 heroes of the week.
Okay, you didn't do weird shit in the news. You did good shit in the news. You're breaking the rules.
Yes. That's why they call me Jesus the Rule Breaker. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Is that not okay?
He was annoying. Most annoying one in the movie. Anyway, moving on. So this is from the Bellingham Herald article by Josh Magnus, and the title says, quote, "You're gonna die. Dog poop debate ends with 3 shot and police standoff.
What?
Washington cops say."
Oh my god.
So basically, this is in Yakima, Washington. A dude named Carl Stone with his cousin Michael and Shauna, and their 62-year-old
Shauna.
Their 62 Their 62-year-old neighbor came up to them wielding a gun, and he blamed them for the dog poop in his yard. And he, like, issued them a warning. He, like, pointed the gun at them.
Oh my fucking god.
He says, quote, "He pointed the gun toward my cousin's neck, and he said, 'Now you're gonna die,' quote. Stone told KOMO, quote, "I was gonna try to do something, and he pointed the gun to me. He said, 'You do anything, I'm gonna shoot you.'" So it happened just after 9 p.m. on Wednesday. Lots of people called the cops. It was one of those things. And the gunshot was heard. The man shot the Shauna and Bretches, which was Carl Stone was like the guy there, and then his two cousins.
Wait, who got shot?
Okay.
I think you're saying like way too many people. I don't know like what's going on.
Two people got shot.
Shauna.
And
but not seriously hurt?
Not seriously hurt.
They're
no.
okay.
They're okay, yeah.
So it's okay that we're joking around.
Yes.
Okay, good.
That's why I was like,
Yeah.
It seems like Michael Bretches and Shauna Umphrey, it was their 62-year-old neighbor, and Carl Stone is the one who's telling the story. And he's like the cousin.
Okay.
But Carl Stone is the one who did not get shot. Michael Bretches and Shauna Umphrey did get shot.
By this crazy 62-year-old neighbor.
Yeah.
Who apparently cannot stand dog poop.
It's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
But here's what happened. So, police treated Umphrey on the scene and took him to the hospital, and then Bretches was believed to have driven himself there later for medical treatment. So their neighbor hid inside his home, and there was a standoff, and the SWAT team managed to get inside the house around 3 a.m. and found the man with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He's in the hospital with a life-threatening injury.
What?
Yes.
I gotta feel like there's way more, like, they need to look into that guy's past, like, and cross-reference it with cold case files, because you don't just do that one day. You don't just go out in your fucking yard and shoot 2 of your neighbors randomly and you never did anything else in your life. Like, there's got to be something else going on.
Shit is fucked up. And then they talk about another story. They're like, it's not the first time dog poop has caused a conflict. And they talk about this guy in Connecticut who stabbed another guy because his like pit bull pooped on their lawn. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, people need to not be so fucking petty.
Yes. I thought that was a good one.
Yeah.
It, like, escalated very quickly.
very quickly. Yeah. Good. Well, that's a happy note to end the pod on. Thanks for listening, y'all.
The dog is okay.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But also, it's important that y'all are listening, and we appreciate it.
Tell your friends.
Tell random people on the street. Just, mumble to yourself while you're sitting on the bus, mystery murdery thing. Like, kind of look like you're crazy. It'll get people interested. They'll be like, what is that? I have to look it up on the Google box.
Are you into mysteries, murderies, thingies?
Thingies.
Exactly.
What? You know what I mean.
Oh, wink, nudge, nudge.
Right. Wink's as good of a nudge to a blind parrot.
What?
I don't know, that's not the line. But it's something like that. A wink's as good as a nod to a blind man? Is that it?
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, bye.
Visit our Patreon page, please. Visit our Instagram page, please.
Yeah, follow us on Insta, mystery murdery thingy.
Yes.
Or email us, mysterymurderything@gmail.com. Tell us how much we suck. Tell us how great we are. Ask a question. Tell us a great fucking story. That'd be cool.
Tell us your mysteries. Suggest a topic. Give us good recipes.
Wire us some money.
All those things. Or none of them. But thank you for listening. Okay, we're fucking done.
Okay, bye.
Bye.